Ever will you please start B, please? About the stadium chairs.
Stadium chairs, I put for $10 to $20 for the purchase of stadium chairs. And then for B, we should look at how much they cost from the people who would buy it from. And C, we should try to put like a little advertising thing out for how much they cost, like a little poster and stuff.
Does anybody have any other costs they'd like to add to what Ms. Montgomery just said?
Can you repeat?
$7 for
Can you
what?
repeat that again?
$5 to $7 for the stadium chairs.
So you're saying that we should be looking at a lower cost product to sell? Okay,
Or 5 to 10.
$5 to $10 should be the actual cost of the stadium chair. Okay, that's your, can anybody have anything new? Mr. Butler?
$5 to $15.
So you'd be willing to pay as much as $15 for the chairs? Okay. Let's continue to work on the cost side of it. What other costs, based on the product mix that we've been studying for some time, do you anticipate that you will incur in trying to market these chairs? Bring them to market, sell them, whatever. Mr. Hall?
Well, when we was on the internet, I saw 46 for the goodest chair.
46 is for the most, that was one of the more expensive chairs. It was also, it's similar to the other, it serves the same function. But more specifically, I want you to focus in on, in order, as we've talked about before, in order to price a product, you have to take into consideration all the costs associated with it. Okay? We understand what the range of costs for buying the chair itself will be. That's one item. But there are a number of other items if you look at the product list. I ask you to turn your attention to the product list, product mix, and go to the list of costs. And think about which of these items, which we've talked about in the past, will actually affect the total cost of the chair. Because the total cost to us will not just be the cost of acquiring it. There'll be other things involved. April said something earlier about marketing those chairs. So is that going to be free, or is there going to be a cost associated with marketing the chairs? That's something you have to factor in. Does anybody have anything to add? Or I'll give the floor to the marketing manager. What do you think it's going to cost to actually market the chairs? On a per chair basis, how much per chair do you estimate it will cost us to market them?
$15.
Marketing cost per chair is $15. That's high. But you're saying that the marketing cost would be 100% of the purchase of the cost of acquisition. That seems kind of high. Can you justify that for us?
Well, it's $10.
Why don't you run through a list of things that you think we'd have to purchase or spend money on in order to market the chairs?
Posters. Easy.
So we have to purchase an easel.
And the posters.
We'll have to purchase posters. We can borrow the easel that's here. Markers. Let me just stop you on that. Are you saying that the total cost will be $10 or $15 for what we need to market?
$10.
$10. Okay. Well, then you need to look at how you would apportion that over the total number of chairs you're going to sell, right? Example. If it's 10, if you think that all of the materials you need to operate an effective marketing campaign for the stadium chairs is $20, right? That's $20 you pay one time, right or wrong?
Right.
So if you're selling more than one chair, that $20 can be amortized over the total number of chairs you end up selling. You see my point? So if you sell 100 chairs, it's not $20 per chair. It's a fraction of that, right? So work on figuring out how many chairs you think we'll sell in 90 days. I think you came up with a number before, right, in the last meeting, an approximation. And then apportion that initial advertising cost over the entire number of chairs you anticipate us selling, and then that will give you the per chair cost for advertising. But Mr. Hall had something while you're doing that. Yes, sir.
The price the marketing could be $12.
Total? What do you think will be entailed in the marketing? What do you foresee having to purchase in order to market the chairs?
Posters
Posters,
and flyers.
who else are we gonna, now, are you talking about trying to market them? That's for the games that come to the lot. What about the high schools and middle schools that we discussed previously? What would you need to actually market them effectively? Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
For the high school games, we can meet up like we did last time for Saturday, the jackets and the uniforms. Meet up with the head coach.
All right,
So
athletic director.
Okay, director.
And I think we had a meeting with Coach Austin, and then we also had a meeting with Booster Club. But we'd have to send out letters or do something, right? So if you figured in postage or
Fax?
envelopes, fax, how much does a fax cost? I mean, it's not free, so you need to build that in to your overall cost structure.
Write a letter.
Okay, well, you have to mail it, right? So figure in how much postage you're gonna need to send out, how many letters you want to the targeted clients, and then we need to then apportion that over a run of 50 or 75, however many chairs you think you can sell in the first 90 days. Did there anything else, Mr. Hall? Does anybody see any other costs here on the list of costs that we need to consider? Mr. Hall?
Break even.
No, list of costs. From here down. You see what I mean? From here down. But you're right, what we're working towards is developing a break-even analysis. But in order to do, you're right, Mr. Hall, but in order to do a break-even analysis, you have to have the costs, all of them. Because if you get to the point that you put a price on a product, make some sales, and then figure out, oh, I forgot about the fact that we paid so-and-so X amount of dollars to hand out flyers for us, then you haven't accurately estimated or taken into consideration your labor costs. That's why I'm saying we need to go through this full list of potential costs and any other costs you think we might incur to have an idea of what this product is actually going to cost you on a per unit basis. Once you know that, then you can do the break-even analysis based upon Mr. Brown's projections of what the sales price should be. So you were correct, Mr. Hall, but you are a step ahead. Well, we want to deal with the cost. Do you see any other costs? We're working on, Javar is working on F, right? Advertising costs, right? Let's see. What about freight, shipping? C. Good, Garrison. Handling, but speak up so that everybody in the meeting can hear you. I heard you, but maybe they didn't hear you.
Shipping and handling.
Shipping and handling, that's something you need to consider. We can say that's under C, which is generally referred to as freight on the product mix, but that's a part of it. Mr. Hall? That's what you talked about initially when you first started talking. In this case, raw materials would not apply, but the finished goods acquisition cost is very important. That's one of the most important aspects of it. Anything else, April, on the list of costs you think we need to consider? Garrison, any other things that we need to consider that might be a cost associated with that product?
No, sir.
Jonathan,
Okay.
nothing to add? Okay. So I guess we'll move forward making the assumption that we thought about all the potential costs. If we haven't, guess what? The transaction, a transaction or a series of transactions will result in a loss. And that loss will be borne by your treasury, money that you've already made. So you need to be clear on that. If you forgot something, if you're not prepared properly, you miscalculated the cost of this product, it will result in either a loss or a reduced profit margin. That's coming out of your treasury. So we will, if we move forward and decide we're gonna do this, the products that we acquire will come from, will be paid for with funds from your treasury. You're clear on that, right? So this is your money to lose or to increase. So it pays to be thorough at this point. Let's see. Anything you want to add, Mr. Hall?
You product mix and talk about costs.
I think you're suggesting we move on. Mr. Brown, don't forget that at the next meeting, you should bring a thorough analysis of advertising costs. Okay? And then, once we compile all the costs, we'll apportion the cost over the number of units you've already estimated, which you did at the last meeting. And then that'll give us a rough idea of the costs associated with the product above and beyond the acquisition cost. And then we'll match that together with your projected sales price. And then we'll move on to what Mr. Hall talked about earlier, which is the break-even analysis. Okay? Mr. Butler, move the meeting along to the next part of your agenda. Yes, sir.
April.
What is C? Let us know what C is so that make sure everybody's on the same page with you.
C is analyze sales and counting about pictures,
Right, portrait sales.
portrait sales.
Okay, so presentation of analysis of portrait sales and calendar. You're busy today, April. That's what the treasurer does. Let's go. Are you ready?
April, please start.
Are you ready to present something about the portrait sales? About the calendar.
Yes.
Do you have a list of costs that we need to consider on the calendar?
Yes.
Okay, we're waiting to hear.
We should, for A, I put, we should each draw a picture for each month, and then we can sell it for $2, and for the, get the materials, you can see about the pricing.
Okay, I think in terms of how we're gonna frame this, it needs to be in combination with not just the treasurer, but the marketing manager. Should have input to actually what the product is. Because April's referring to drawing pictures that will be presented in a calendar format. I think you'd also talked about actually having pictures or having some other form of media be the basis for the calendar. Do you have any comments on that, Jabari?
For the price of the pictures? The cost?
No. What actually is the calendar product going to be? Does anybody have any input on that? Is it going to be a calendar, as April said, that's based upon artwork done by the youth within the program? Or will it be based upon some other media? Okay,
I think it should be based upon the program.
artwork by children in the program. Anybody else have a comment? Mr. Hall?
Artwork.
From children in the program? Okay. Anybody else have a comment on that? What do you think? Then that's something that we can market.
No.
Why? Why not? I was asking you to defend your position. You have a position, you have a right to have an opinion. I just want you to defend it. And defend it based upon some sound business reason. You're an officer, so you have a right to voice your opinion.
The reason why I say that because some people might not be drunk as good as the other person.
So your issue is one of quality then? Is that it? Of the artwork? Garrison, you're the president. What do you think about this? We have two, to kind of narrow it for you, we have two schools of thought that have been forwarded so far. April and LaJuan said that we could be successful marketing calendars based upon artwork created by youth that are in the after-school program or that are within the circle of friends that you may have. That's one school of thought. The other school of thought is Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown has a question of quality, meaning that the quality of the artwork may not justify somebody paying money for the artwork and hence the calendar. Which do you believe is the most sound?
Device. Because the picture got to be perfect and straight.
Okay. So you sound like a reluctant second to Mr. Brown's way of thinking. Okay. At this point, we have two people who think, and all we're talking about now is, I know he's there. All we've got to now is what the product should be. We have two people that say the product should be artwork created by youth. We have two people who say that that's not going to fly. Mr. Height, we haven't heard from you.
Nope.
And you could very well be, you are rather, the balance of power here in terms of determining what you'll actually move forward with and what you won't. What do you think?
Nope.
No to what?
You shouldn't
We shouldn't. Do art. Nothing.
What should we do with the calendar? What should the calendar be based on?
Right. Something.
Writing
On
something?
the planner. On the on the clan. on the calendar.
Okay. Mr. Brown has his hand up first, but I'll come back to you next. Mr. Brown, you just want to say something?
Can we just stick with the pictures by the basketball? Her basketball pictures for mom and dad just went to the science play.
I mean, the action photos for basketball season.
Cause the pictures, they might not sell until there's the pictures on film.
So you're saying abandon this project altogether and focus only on selling the pictures that you will take on the successive basketball Saturdays and Mondays and Wednesdays? Okay, hold that thought. April?
I disagree with him and him.
Okay, go ahead.
I disagree with him because some people in here, they don't write as good as other people, and I disagree with him because when we voted on that, I said no. 'Cause I don't do it.
Right, so you said no to the picture sale. Mr. Butler. Mr. Butler. Mr. Butler. What did you all ultimately decide about the picture sales? For basketball games?
Oh, you talking about when?
No, at the last meeting, if not the last meeting, the previous meeting, we already had a vote on whether or not to move forward with the picture sales. I think Jonathan had that idea. It was your idea to sell the pictures, and that's why we put it to the vote.
Luan. I think we should videotape.
And that was Luan's idea, I'm sorry. But didn't we already have a vote on whether we move forward with the picture sales? And what was the result?
I said
Do
no.
it.
No, but what was the majority? How did the majority fall on that? So it's 4-1?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've already decided on whether we're gonna move forward on the picture sales. That's a separate product from the product we're talking about now, which is the calendar. So what we need to do now, we're having a deliberation now on whether or not you should move forward with the calendar sale. Mr. Brown?
What's gonna be with the calendar?
Well, that's what we're trying to decide now, what the content is gonna be.
Like a
Is it-
calendar with the date on it?
Well, yeah, calendars have dates on them, but I'm just saying, normally you would have an area at the top of the calendar, which you could put a picture or a message or whatever. Like some businesses use Black History Month calendars as a marketing tool. They have the name of the business at the bottom, and they have in each date an accomplishment or achievement or the date of birth or some significant some significant event in the history of African Americans within the calendar. So there are a couple different ways that people do it. April?
I don't want to sell those pictures.
Okay. Well, the reason we take votes is because ultimately the majority position is the one that we're going to pursue. I think we've already voted on that. I think it was 4-1. Does anybody have a different opinion than they had the last time we voted on the picture sales idea? Because technically that's getting off the agenda to start talking about that again. Okay. Where we are now is that we had 3 people say no to the idea that the calendar should be based on, what do you call this? Artistic renderings of the youth, drawings, whatever, sketches. It was 3-2 against that. So where do we go now with the calendar? April?
The people who voted no, they don't have to do it. People who voted that they would do it, they can do it.
But I think you have to work as a group on this, right? Because, for instance, we split it down the line of the vote, we would have the treasurer being involved. We would have the one who's quite talented and has good ideas being involved. We would not have the president being involved. We wouldn't have Jonathan being involved. And the marketing manager wouldn't be involved. I just don't see that working without everybody at the table, you know, carrying their own weight and actually doing something to make it work. So I don't know, I don't think that that's a good idea to try to divide the group up and have only two doing one project, two doing another project. At least not yet, because you've done about 3 different things so far. And all of them have made money. But the one constant is that everybody contributed. When you did the concessions for the basketball games, everybody contributed. That's why it was a success. But if you get to the point that only 1 or 2 people are gonna do a given activity, I think you really limit your chances for being successful. Any comment from you as a president? What do you think about that?
Intimidated by my presence? I hope not.
I like to call that an intellectual pause, but it's going to the point now that we have to come up with another name for it. Do you want us to come back to you on that? Okay. What do you think about that? Part of you working on one thing, or part of you working on something else? Mr. Hall?
I don't know.
You have no opinion?
It just come back to you.
Jonathan, what do you think about that? Part of you working on one project or one product, and the rest of you doing something else. Do you think that's a good way to move forward and actually be successful?
No. No,
Okay.
sir.
That's one that says no. What do you think, Mr. Brown?
No.
2. We know where your treasurer stands. We have 2 that say no, 1 who is,
No.
3 that say no. I think that's pretty much decided. Mr. Butler, do you want to just get your position on the record?
Nah.
So you have no opinion? Okay.
Yes, I know. Do you have an opinion for the picture?
Only thing I have an opinion of is bill ticket. So I will get that.
So I think as far as the portrait sale project is concerned, in between today's the 19th of February, right?
19.
Okay. Your next meeting would be on the 24th of February, is that correct? That's next Tuesday?
Saturday and Sunday. I don't know.
I think probably
24th.
Yeah, 24.
24th. Between now and the 24th, this is what needs to happen. Remember, I'm only an advisor here, you all have to make the decision. You have to decide on the content of this product, whether it's gonna be pictures, whether it's gonna be, I think we kind of killed the idea of the artwork, whether it's gonna be a theme or whatever for these calendars, if you're gonna do it. Also, portrait scenes, we talked about doing portraits, people doing, someone with artistic talent doing portraits of people. You need to decide on the content of the product, what the product's actually gonna be before you go to any of these other issues. While we have you, April, do you have a list of costs for this calendar?
Yes, I put for $2.
No, is that gonna be, what cost is that? Is that our acquisition cost?
The calendar, what is the calendar about?
That's what we need to deliberate on, because right now, we've said no
What
to
calendar-
artistic
Is the calendar
work.
for, is it like this? Is it like for this?
For what?
The,
They're
the
for sale.
portraits and stuff.
The calendar is what you want it to be. It just needs to make sense so that you can profit from it. Because if you send money to the, excuse me, okay? Bless you. If we send money to the producer of calendars, they send the calendar back. Now you've spent your money. So that's what I'm saying, you need to have a good understanding of what you're gonna.
We don't need a calendar though.
Don't interrupt.
Let me, go ahead.
What, the calendar be like for, like, the portraits about, is gonna be talking about portraits? What calendar are we what kind of calendar are we talking about?
Like a planner.
Which is precisely what you need to be discussing. What kind of calendar would this be?
Is the calendar like say it has dates and then under the dates you have about like the portraits, you know, I'm gonna do what?
No, I think that what had been discussed was that, just for instance, calendars are normally laid out landscape style, which is
Yes.
like this, right? At the top of the page is a space generally reserved for
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
pictures, whatever you want to attract the user to. Below below the calendar itself, like a flap that's on the rear cover or the front cover would be Javari Brown, marketing consultant. You follow me? So they associate the business with the calendar. Your calendar can be similar. It can have young merchants at the bottom, whereas at the top, that's what you're actually selling. What's at the top, and also perhaps what's within the dates themselves, that's the content that you're selling. So you need to think about what would be of interest to people to sell. What would they buy? For instance, you have athletic teams that have calendars, and people will buy them because they're a Jaguars fan or a Indianapolis Colts fan. But that's your target market. You want people who are interested in football, number one, and number two, in that particular team. Your calendar needs to be something that's going to attract people and make them want to buy it based upon some interest they have in the subject, and the subject is at the top. So, what do you think? Any ideas on the content of the calendar?
You know, I talk about the space.
The space at the top, right, that's the
Have
content.
the portrait, have the pictures, the symbol.
So that would mean you use the pictures twice. You use the pictures to sell to the parents.
You use it using the posters for the thing, and the easel and the posters for how, when we are selling on Saturdays, whenever we can.
Okay. That's an idea. Mr. Hall, any ideas on the calendar? What should the calendar be about? What should the content of the calendar be?
Basketball games and the portrait days.
Okay. Really, you should deliberate about this individually, come back with your own ideas about it. And then in the next meeting on the 24th, you come to some conclusion about one, the content of the calendar. So put that on the agenda for next Tuesday. You should come back with answers about the content of the calendar. Content. What you actually want to show people in the calendar, what it's going to be about. Is it going to be about basketball? Just examples. Is it going to be about music or something that you're actually selling that will make people want to buy the calendar? That's number one. Number two, you need to come back with on Tuesday, cost analysis by April of the calendar. Everything except acquisition. Acquisition, I'll do the research on and come back with the approximate cost of acquisition, cost of the calendar. But you need to have April on Tuesday, an analysis of what the other costs would be. Mr. Brown, you need to come back with,
Cost of the stadium chairs?
no, we did that last time. Come back with a marketing plan. A marketing plan. How you think we should go about marketing the calendar. Are you clear on that? Taking notes on this so you won't be, or are you clear on what you need to do for the next meeting? And I'm sure you'll have some good ideas by the next meeting on the calendar.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
Okay.
I had an idea.
Why don't you read what you wrote then?
Man,
I know you always have good ideas.
I wrote down
You have to
y'all
be more
ideas.
expressive.
Yeah.
Go ahead and tell, Lawan Hall has some ideas that he jotted down about the calendar. Go ahead.
I put review product mix. Number 1, talk about list of costs.
No,
That's all.
right here. What you have there.
Oh,
That's the content part of the calendar that you jotted down during the meeting. What do you think? Go ahead.
what?
Read this. That's what you jotted down, talking about the calendar.
I wrote basketball pictures, mom and daughter pictures, father and son pictures.
Did everybody hear that?
he said.
So that's what Lawan thinks the calendar should show. Mother and daughter pictures, father and son pictures.
Or the whole family.
Well, you need to write that down. That's your contribution.
Oh, yeah,
to this.
Mr. Bell, my favorite to do, at the end of the basketball season, have the teams and their mothers have them take a big picture of the team and then holding the trophy with all the parents and stuff.
And then you plan to sell that? To,
The parents.
okay. Write that down. That'll be another idea. But in any event, we'll come to some conclusion about what the content of the calendars should be on the 24th of February, which is next Tuesday. So move us along, Mr. Hall, not Mr. Hall, Mr. Butler, to the next part of the, next item on the agenda.
D? Yeah, D.
Yes, sir.
Open floor discussion.
What's the next thing after that?
Reading knowledge and of officers. I mean, renomination. Yeah, renomination.
Is that something that, first of all, is that something that you want to do? Because I've heard some discussion about the officers.
Good answer.
And some people have expressed an interest in being an officer. What somebody needs to say, showing their hand that they do want to renominate officers, and someone needs to second that, if that's actually what you want to do. April,
I want to renominate some officers.
do you want to renominate all of the officers, or just certain officers?
Me?
Okay, she has a hand. April has brought to the floor a desire to renominate some of the officers, not all the officers. What are you in favor of, if anything?
Renominate some.
Okay, so,
I have a nomination
go ahead.
for the marketing manager.
You are currently marketing manager.
But he,
Before that has to happen, you would have to say that you
resign.
would like to resign or relinquish your position as marketing manager.
All right, let's vote.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, if he doesn't want to do it or can't do it,
The one?
I guess someone has to second that. If anybody else wants to make, or anybody else want to make Lawan Hall the marketing manager or nominate him for the position of marketing manager?
You
You
can't
already
nominate
nominated him.
yourself.
You nominated him, that somebody needs to
nominated.
second it. Anybody want to second that? Speak up, sir.
I would like to second the nomination
You mean
for
third.
the one Paul for marketing manager.
Marketing.
Okay. Do you accept, Mr. Hall? All right. Is there another office that needs to, that you want to? Go ahead.
Security
April.
guard.
Treasurer.
Again, you are.
I would like to renominate president.
One second. You are the current treasurer.
Huh.
So what are you saying? You want to resign the office of treasurer? Okay. So we need to renominate a treasurer. Who would you like to nominate the office of treasurer? Javari Brown. Does anybody like to second that?
What you had said?
Treasurer man.
We, April, wants to
Him?
resign
Yes.
her office of treasurer.
I'm scared.
And she then decided to nominate Javari Brown for treasurer, the office of treasurer. We need someone to second that. You have your hand up.
I would like to
Second the treasurer.
second the
Treasurer.
nomination for
Javar.
Javari Brown for treasurer.
Yeah, how about
You
that?
accept?
Yes.
Okay, so we've adjusted 2 officers.
I stay.
You have something to say?
She gonna be vice president. I'm sorry.
Okay, so
And-
we have more than enough support to do that.
And I want to renominate. I want to renominate president, and it should be April.
You know she don't want.
Well, as I told you, right, since we don't have all of the members here, and there are gonna be additional members added, even beyond the others that we have,
Well,
there's gonna be an election. Let me finish. There's gonna be an election. Right now, these are temporary offices that will allow you to function and give everybody, or give some of you responsibilities in the organization. But subsequent to the addition of members, we will have an election. Right now, these are just nominated positions that you will respect because you made nominations yourself. Mr. Brown?
can we renominate when other people get here? Renominate president.
We can have an election then, based upon other nominations that they
No,
may,
just
that
for
the new members may make.
Just for president.
First of all,
No.
how do you feel about being president, Mr. Butler?
See what I mean?
I don't like when Karen be saying me like that.
I didn't hear what you said now?
It's all right.
I took your daughter's spot.
Well, he doesn't want to resign, okay?
Do you want to resign?
Nah, not to you.
I
To
must-
April.
May I add something?
Temporarily.
May I add something to it? May I add something? Don't forget now that in the concession sales, he
Can we start those?
was very successful and
Make
very
people
aggressive
pay.
in actually making sales in the
Can we
concession
do that
days.
again?
We're gonna try, but not for basketball, probably for T-ball, because all the
Football.
basketball days are already spoken for. Mr. Hall?
Can we skip and go to D2?
D2, for the man can speak.
Mr. Hall is about business, he wants to move it along. So we renominated 2 officers, we have the same president as we had before, Mr. Butler. And we'll move on to, what should we move on to, Mr. President?
D2.
Yes. Yes. Like the book.
Okay, Mr. Parrish, we're gonna give you the floor now.
Preach my brother.
Mr. Parrish is from, just so you know, he's from Mount Sinai Baptist Church. And the minister there, Pastor Gundy, indicated that Mount Sinai had at least 10 prospective participants, or new members in the Young Merchants. So he was here today to get a feel for what you do, what the program is all about. And we're gonna give the floor to him now so that he can ask questions of you, so he get a better feel for what you've experienced, what your goals are, and the direction you want to take the program in, because it's your program. The Young Merchants is your program. Mr. Parrish?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Mr. Bell, for inviting me to be here. And I think what's happening here is something that for youngsters at this level is quite encouraging. Because business is, in my opinion, is the future for us as a people. Where we produce products and services and we control what happens as far as we are concerned from an economic point of view. That is the sale of goods and services for the purpose of acquiring money. And certainly what you can learn here will serve you well in terms of preparing you for the future. Just to give you a brief idea in terms of what it is I do. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of a community development corporation. And what that is a not-for-profit organization. And what we do is we provide services, and those services are broad-based in the sense that there are a variety of services that we provide. Now, they're not provided by the corporation itself. What we have done is we have formed partnerships with various programs that provide services. And the reason for this is there are in existence programs that are providing services to our people presently. And the vision for Pastor Gundy was to bring those services under one umbrella, under one organization, so that there is a coordinated effort in terms of what's being done, so that you don't have services that are being provided that are not linked to other services. So that if an individual has a particular need and that need is being served in one location, that doesn't mean that every need that person has is served at that one location. And there are other opportunities elsewhere that individual should be able to take advantage of. So what we're doing is getting them to come together, identifying what each unit of service, if you will, provides, so that we can then act in a coordinated way to provide total services to the communities that we serve. Let me just talk briefly about business, because it's something that I'm very, very much interested in. Professionally, I was a hospital administrator. I retired as a hospital administrator. But during the period that I was working in my profession, I also was in business. And the first business that I was in, I was a pharmacist. Both my wife and I, trained, educated as pharmacists. And we operated our own pharmacy. So when you talk about goods and services, you're talking about acquiring goods for resale. You buy it at a price, and just as you're learning here, there's certain costs that go along with the cost of the item that you buy. And you have to make sure that you add those costs for the other parts of your operation, so that when you sell your product, you sell it at a price that you can make a profit. That's business. How you buy and how you sell makes the difference. And all of the costs associated with the product that you buy for resale have to be taken into consideration. I was also in the restaurant business while I was working in my profession. And in the restaurant business, I had a restaurant. I lived in Barbados for 12 years. I had a restaurant there. When I say I, my family, my wife and my children. And when we returned to the United States, we lived in Charleston, South Carolina, and we had a restaurant there. And again, when you would come to my restaurant and you sat at the table and you ordered from a menu and the food was put before you, there were costs associated with putting that food in front of you. The acquisition costs, acquiring the item, buying the item. So the cost of the item had to be taken into consideration. And then there were other costs associated with putting that plate in front of a customer. You have lights that you have to pay for. You have heat and air conditioning that you have to pay for. You have staff that you have to pay for. You have maintenance of your building that you have to pay for. All of those costs have to be added to the cost of the item that you're selling. And then you apply a price in terms of what you're going to sell your product for, so that after you subtract all of the costs associated with what it takes to present the product to your customer, you come up with a profit. So what you're learning here is something that is so important in terms of preparing yourself for the future. Because you also need, even if you don't go into business, you also need to have an understanding of how business operates. And you should be able, when you go to make a purchase, to have an understanding of what goes into arriving at the cost of the item that you are purchasing. This is a very important thing that you're doing. And it's an opportunity to learn some things that will help you in a number of different ways. What we're trying to do with the Community Development Corporation, we're not selling a product, but what we're doing is delivering a service. And there's a cost when you deliver services. It's not always putting something in front of a person or bagging it and handing it to a person, but it's using, quite often, using your mind, your experience, your education, and that comes with a price. When you go to the doctor, and the doctor provides you with services, he examines you, he prescribes medication on occasions, he advises you, and there's a price for that. So business is the exchange of goods and services at a price. So this is a tremendous opportunity, and I would strongly advise and recommend that you take full advantage of it, because it will make a difference in terms of decisions that you will make in the future. If you have any questions that you might have for me, I'll be very happy to make an attempt to answer them for you.
Also, Mr. Paris, if you have any questions for them, since you're the representative of the Mount Sinai Baptist Church today, they might be able to tell you what they've experienced, what their goals are, and tell you a little bit about the program from a participant's point of view. Ask any of them questions.
Okay, first of all, let me ask, how long has the group been in existence?
Since last year.
That's my first year.
This is your first year, but it's
Well,
been
this is gonna
operating.
be my second.
That's what I'm saying. That's my second.
And what is the total number of, if they were all here, how many would you have?
Let me explain. We have a list of students who are in transition, let's say. They have expressed an interest in being in. They are enrolled in the after-school, primetime after-school program, which these students are drawn from at the YMCA. There's a list of about 6 that would also be a part of this group. But as it stands now, since these have been, this is the core, and their officers and et cetera, this is why the meeting is including only them. But there'll be a total of about 10 or 11. And so we're trying to get to a number which will have a critical mass of people and more ideas. We want more Mr. Halls, more Mr. Brown, people that come in with the energy, more April, come in with the energy and make things happen in here.
What?
No, Garrison has good ideas too. Garrison contributes. Garrison is a very good salesman. While he might not be the most talkative person, he's a very good salesman. So, like I said previously, everybody has something to contribute. Next question.
Let me just suggest something, and I know, just sitting here and observing and listening, sometimes it's very difficult for all of us to express ourselves the way we would like to. And more particularly, if we're not in an environment, if we're not in a situation where we're very comfortable and we know everybody, and you have a stranger who comes in and you're quite sensitive about it. But let me just suggest this, and I know because I've been there. If you have something that you want to say, and as presidents set the example, they provide the leadership, they set the tone. So they have to be out there, up front, aggressive. You with me? Okay. Next time I meet with you, I would like to be in a position to see you providing the kind of leadership that a president provides. And I know it's not easy sometimes, and you become sensitive, but the thing that's important is if you have something to say, you say it without taking into consideration or being concerned about what somebody else thinks about it. If you have a question to ask, you ask it. Because quite often, the same question that you have, somebody else is sitting there with the same question, not willing to ask that question. And happy if you ask it, because then they get the answer. And don't ever let anybody keep you from getting information and acquiring knowledge. If you haven't heard it, you'll hear it at some time, and you'll hear it more and more, that knowledge is power. The more knowledge you have, the more capable you are to deal with different situations. In terms of questions for the group, I don't know as if I have any, Mr. Bell.
Well, just to give you an idea, they've done a couple of different projects. They've all made money. They received a disbursement. They operate more so like a partnership than a corporate entity, in that the disbursement is made periodically. Let's say if you're doing a partnership. They received a disbursement in December. They received another one in January. And they're now trying to look at other projects they can do to utilize the funds that are in their treasury. And I thought you might have had some questions for them in terms of their impressions of the program, what they...
Yeah, tell me how you feel about what you're doing and the importance. April, you're a quiet but smoldering bundle of knowledge sitting there. How do you feel about the program, and how long have you been in the program?
I've been for I think 3 or 2 years.
And how do you feel about the program?
Stop for me to go.
It's a good way to learn how to make money.
Good. It's good experience, and it's something that that the more you put it, it's like anything else, the more you put into it, the more you're gonna get out of it.
He's something. He can give you some. He's never at a loss for words. But, does that finish your question?
Yeah, if they have any questions that, you know, they would like to ask of me, I'd be happy to try to respond to them.
Well then, Mr. Butler, as the president, why don't you bring this meeting to a close?